may had some work commitment and they've asked for an excuse. And then I've had a few that made note that they will be a little late. So I think in the essence of time and with respect to everybody's schedule, I would say we get started, Jalissa. So as soon as you tell me we're on Facebook Live, we'll move right into it.
Oh, we're on Facebook Live now, so.
Oh, we're here. Okay. Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the City of Brookhaven's Social Justice, Race, and Equity Commission meeting. Today is Thursday, April 15th, 2021. I am John J. Funny, and I will be presiding this evening. So that we have, so that we may limit the amount of interruption, I ask that you please mute your devices until you're ready to talk. And when you are speaking, I ask that you turn off all of your cell devices, or at least put them on vibrate if you don't turn them off. This Social Justice, Race, and Equity Commission public meeting has been called on matters pursuant to the Mayor and City Council approved resolution 2020-09-01 to establish the Social Justice, Race, and Equity Commission. And as specified on tonight's agenda, this meeting is now called to order. Get something here. All right, so next, let's see. I will do our roll call. Before we do roll call, I just wanted everyone to, in your own way, take a moment of silence for the life loss of Dante Wright, a young man, young African-American male that was killed this past week. And we offer our condolences to the family and the friends and everyone who's been affected by this killing. It is so precious to have life. And as we have life, we ask that those of us who are still here and those of us who are here with us today, we pause for a moment of silence in honoring the life of Dante Wright. Thank you. As a way of introduction, I will call the roll in alphabetical order and have each commissioner to acknowledge their presence. So while I'm preparing, I ask that everyone please come off of mute so that you may be able to respond as we are calling. And my target is to make this quicker every meeting. We have 37 names and I want to break my record from the last meeting. So here goes. All right, Commissioner Alexander.
Here.
Commissioner Alvarez. Commissioner Alvarez. Commissioner Anwar.
This is he.
Commissioner Arif.
Here.
Commissioner Barrera. Commissioner Barrera. Commissioner Becerra. Commissioner Becerra. Commissioner Bowden. She was one that's working a little late. She'll be joining us a little late. Jalissa, let's watch for her so that we can reflect the record when she arrived. Commissioner Burnett. Commissioner Burnett. Commissioner Kane.
Present.
Commissioner Curiello.
Present.
Commissioner Collins. Commissioner Collins. Commissioner Cosez, send in an excused absence. Commissioner Korn, send in excused absence. She's listening, but she's with us. She won't be participating much, but she's listening. Okay.
I'm present. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Cruz.
Present.
Commissioner Funny, I'm here. Commissioner Hardy. Commissioner Hardy. Commissioner Hershen. He'll be joining us a little late. Commissioner Hershen will be joining us a little later. Commissioner Henson. Commissioner Henson has an work-related excused absence. Commissioner Knight.
Present.
Commissioner Minor.
Present.
Commissioner Moses.
Present.
Commissioner Murthy Wall.
Present.
Commissioner Naglish.
Naglich, present.
Naglish, thank you. Commissioner Nelson. Commissioner Nelson. Commissioner Nisi,
Here. Present.
thank you. Commissioner Owen.
Present.
Commissioner Petzold. Commissioner Petzold. Commissioner Palmer. Commissioner Palmer. Commissioner Pascal.
Present.
Commissioner Pascal, thank you. Commissioner Russell.
Present.
Commissioner Thomas.
Present.
Commissioner Todd.
Present.
Commissioner Torres. Commissioner
Yeah,
Torres.
yeah, okay. Present, sorry about
Thank you. Commissioner Wells.
Present.
Commissioner Wendell.
Present.
Commissioner Woodward.
I'm here.
And Commissioner Wright.
I'm here.
Good, we're getting quicker at this. Well, thank you all for your
Did you
response.
call me? Commissioner Williams is here.
Commissioner Williams.
And Commissioner Hardy's here also.
Okay, Commissioner Hardy is here. Commissioner Williams, thank you.
I don't know if you heard me, Zaki Anwar.
I'm sorry.
I don't know if you heard me, Zaki Anwar. I'm here.
All right, thank you. Making notes. Thank you. All right, very good. Did I miss anybody else? Or did anyone show up after the call? We're good. Thank you all very much for your responsiveness to our roll call. Next little business that we have to handle. Everyone should have received the meeting minutes from our March 18th, 2021 full commission meeting. I will entertain a motion for the approval of the meeting minutes at this time.
So move.
Let's see, who said that? I'm trying to make sure I get the.
Commissioner Knight.
Thank you, Commissioner Knight. Is there a second?
And Commissioner Corello seconds.
Thank you, Commissioner Corello. In our Zoom virtual environment, I will call for anyone who opposed the acceptance of the meeting minutes to say nay and state your name. Anyone who opposed? Yeah, okay, thank you. All those in favor of accepting the meeting minutes, state aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Let the record show that the meeting minutes have been accepted unanimously with no opposition. Thank you. Okay, next thing, you have before you the agenda for our mode of operation for our meeting this evening. I will now entertain a motion for the adoption of the agenda as presented.
Alexander, so move.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Tony
Commissioner
Hudson,
Thomas, I'll
second.
We had two persons seconding. Can we get that again? I missed both names. You said it at the exact same time.
Commissioner Thomas, also seconded.
Okay, thank you. It's been properly moved and second. Is there any unreadiness? Any unreadiness? Our debate on the motion. Any unreadiness? Hearing none. All those that oppose accepting the agenda as presented, adopting the agenda, state nay and state your name for the record. All those who oppose, state nay and state your name for the record. Hearing none, all those who are in favor, state aye.
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 Thank you,
Aye.
thank you, thank you. Let the record show that the agenda has been adopted unanimously with no opposition. Thank you very much. Commission charge. We are here, and the purpose for us being here is to look at a variety of documents and policies and processes that exist at the city. And the mayor and council have entrusted to each of us as a team to do this collectively. And we appreciate the mayor and council for their leadership in putting this to us. First, we will be reviewing the Brookhaven vision and mission statements to see if there needs to be any tweak or adjustments. Then we're going to look into improvements to the Brookhaven policies and protocols as it relates to hiring and retention, procurement, and contracting. We will also be looking at the Brookhaven Police Department policies, actions, and accountability regarding use of force to identify the need for recommendations for improvements and are looking at best practices in comparison to what others may be doing with other police departments. Additionally, we will make certain that we have a continued and robust citizen participation as it relates to social justice, race, and equity. This is a very important piece for this exercise because we want public input. We want to have forums, we want to have some outreach to make certain that we are inclusive of the input from the citizens of Brookhaven. And then we want to look at innovative policy statements across a line connected issues. There may be things that we are addressing that may need to be considered from an innovative perspective. So as we are looking to be a sustainable city, oftentimes there would be a need to look at innovation. Sometimes we may have to lead the way, and that's okay. Brookhaven has led the way in many things, many great things, and we may do the same as it relates to social justice, race, and equity. Just as an update, on May 4th at the City Council meeting, this is the Mayor and Council meeting, I will be providing a briefing to City Council on the great work that each of us are doing. This is not an I show, but this is a show where we are all keeping our hands on the steering wheel to make certain that we are looking at the items and the areas that we're charged with reviewing to make recommendations to the Mayor and Council later in the year. But we've covered a lot of grounds over the past 4 months, 5 months, 4 months, 5 months. We started in December. And I wanted to be able to provide the Mayor and Council update. I welcome any of you to join in to the City Council meeting. It will be a virtual meeting, and you can keep me on course with the briefing. But this is a point at which we will provide them an opportunity to hear the progress, the great progress that have been made to this point, and allow them an opportunity to ask any questions of the commission. All right, with that, I'm going to now call on Commissioner Danita Knight, and she will provide us with a moment of inspiration. Commissioner Knight.
Thank you so much, Chairman Funny, and great to see everyone tonight. So I looked around for a message that I thought would speak to our group, and I uncovered something that Congressman John Lewis shared before his passing. So I'd like to share that with everyone this evening. And these are his words. And it reads, "My philosophy is very simple. If you see something that's not right, not fair, or not just, you have a moral obligation to say something, do something, stand up, and speak out." So I feel that that accurately describes what we are doing as a body, and it's just my pleasure to have the opportunity to work with all of you. I look forward to all that we're going to continue to do. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Commissioner Knight, for those inspirational words. I really appreciate you sharing that with us. And it's so appropriate. It's so appropriate for the work that we're doing, speaking up and saying something. So thank you, Commissioner Knight, for sharing.
Thank you, my pleasure.
Yes, thank you. All right, next up, we're going to move over to Chrysalis Labs, and we're going to invite Mindy. Mindy is going to share with us Brookhaven history. Mindy, you there?
Yep, I am here.
Hello, how are you?
Good. Thank you, Commissioner Funny. Yes, so this month we are continuing again, deepening everyone's understanding of the history of Brookhaven, its neighborhoods, and its communities. And so today we're talking about the other historic district that is in Brookhaven. As you might remember, in February, we talked about Linwood Park, which is one of the two historic districts. Today, we're talking about historic Brookhaven district, which was added to the US Register of Historic Places in 1986. So historic Brookhaven district sits directly below Linwood Park. Linwood Park is this light green area right above the brown, sort of elongated area, which is historic Brookhaven district. And it's actually located in two different cities. About half of it's located in the city of Brookhaven, and the other half is located in city of Atlanta, a Buckhead area. So, historic Brookhaven district. So again, I'm going to ask you to think back to January, where we talked about the indigenous lands that Brookhaven sits on. And you might remember that I mentioned that it was on, at one point it was Cherokee land, and at another point it became Muskogee Creek Indian land. And in 1821, the state of Georgia signed the Treaty of Indian Springs, which essentially meant that they acquired the area that eventually became DeKalb County, including Brookhaven. So during that time, a settler named John L. Evans purchased a 615-acre plot of land, and that land would eventually become the historic Brookhaven district. On this land, he started a plantation, and not much is known about this plantation, but we do know that it was later sold to a man named Solomon Goodwin, and then another man named Salson Stovall, before it was purchased by a group of investors in 1910, who would subdivide and develop the property into an area called Brookhaven Estates. And you can see the blueprint sort of design that on over here in the picture on the left. So they would form Brookhaven Estates, as well as the Brookhaven Country Club, which would later become the Capital City Country Club, and golf course. During the early 1900s, the homes that were in this area served as summer cottages for prominent Atlantans, and it features the works of noted architects of those times. And today, these homes are worth well into the millions. This neighborhood boasts the title of the oldest planned golf course and country club residential community in Georgia. In the first half of the 20th century, the areas surrounding this popular development would also be bought up and developed into homes. So today, this neighborhood is represented by the historic Brookhaven Neighborhood Association. They're an active group of residents who work together to build a sense of community. They host Bible studies, community events, and provide other community services. And these are images of some of their events and gatherings that I pulled from their neighborhood association page. So that is historic Brookhaven district.
Thank you, Mindy. Do you know how much they paid for that 615-acre lot?
I wish.
I don't know. I'm just wondering. It probably was something like $2,000, you know. All right. Well, thank you for that historical moment about Brookhaven. We appreciate you sharing that with us. All right. So next, we're going to go into our subcommittee updates. This is very important because all 4 subcommittees have begun work, and we will begin dedicating time at the beginning of each commission meeting for each subcommittee to provide a 2 to 3 minute update on the progress of their respective work. These updates will allow us to stay abreast of and aligned on how your work is progressing. And notice I say your work because this is all of our work as a team. There are opportunities for commissioners to learn from one another, cross-pollinating ideas and plans. So we're going to work together as a team, and the subcommittee is going to come forth and share information that may be beneficial to other subcommittees. So this is going to be a great update where others can glean from what our peers are doing. I would say we are incredibly pleased at the progress being made. We are making great progress and looking forward to your questions and comments. We've heard some very interesting discussions thus far. This is good. And about opportunities to make improvements. So we've heard some great discussions about opportunities to make improvements. So we've been looking under the hood. We've been looking under the hood and we've been asking some questions about the different components of the engine. In the data, just for a couple of things that we've been hearing, we've heard that in the data we've gathered for the police stocks and for potential hires and in formalizing human resource practice such as exit interviews and et cetera. So there are some things that are being asked within the police department as we gather the data, and there are some things that are being formalized within HR to improve practices such as exit interviews, for example. So we've asked each co-chair to take 3 minutes each to update you on their work. If you have questions for them or comments, please put that in the chat and we will allot 15 minutes after all of the updates so that commissioners that would have questions, you will have an opportunity to have your questions entertained. I'm going to call on Kim with Chrysalis Labs. She's going to actually facilitate this component. Kim, are you there?
Yes, I am. Good evening,
How are you?
everybody. I'm
Good.
good. How are you all?
Good.
So we get started, and Mindy's going to help me make sure we stay, but I know everybody's going to be conscious and stay within their 3 minutes, so we won't have to beat anybody up. And so we're going to start with the Vision and Mission Subcommittee, and Commissioners Russell and Pasquale. I don't know who is going to speak.
Well, I'm going to speak, but I think Commissioner Russell wanted to make a few brief introductory comment before I do. Go ahead.
Good evening. This is Tiffany Russell here. And I just wanted to share that and thank again Commissioner Sigmund for introducing us to some pretty fine people who are at the who are critical players in the early cityhood efforts of Brookhaven. As such, Commissioner Pascal and I were able to have some pretty lengthy conversations with the following people. Councilperson of District 1, Lindley Jones, Don Bonilla, and Stan Siegel, both of whom played a vital part in the formation of the city of Brookhaven. These conversations helped inform our agenda for our meeting that we had on May 6th. Not May 6th, excuse me. We just had it in April. And also, you know, to help us to kind of identify some questions that we still need to ask and, you know, help to charge our subgroup. And Commissioner Pascal will give an update on the last meeting that we had.
So good evening. So the Mission and Vision Subcommittee, we met for the first time last Thursday, and we're going to be meeting the first Thursday of every month until November. We had a pretty interesting meeting. It was an introductory meeting. So we shared Brookhaven's vision and mission statements. We also had Christian talk to us about the city charter. We had Stephen from Chrysalis talk to us about exemplar governance documents. And I want to highlight 3 examples that he gave because they were pretty interesting. He talked about a racial equity and social justice initiative from the city of Madison, Wisconsin. He also highlighted the city of Minneapolis as a pretty progressive vision and mission statement that talks about a compassionate city, social well-being, closing disparities. And he also shared the city of Asheville, North Carolina, which has a vision 2036 that talks about we care about our people and our cities for everybody. So what our subcommittee is going to be doing, we're going to be looking at Brookhaven's mission and vision through the lens of social justice and race and equity. We're going to be asking, does the city's mission and vision embrace and reflect the values of social justice, racial equity, inclusion, and diversity? We're gonna decide if the city needs a new mission and vision. Do we need to tweak the city's vision and mission, and do we need to supplement this mission and vision with a list of values, which the city currently does not have, but other organizations have, like a parallel list of values that support the mission and vision. And so some of the questions that we're going to ask, we're going to be analyzing in depth the mission and vision statements and discussing this. You already started a discussion on our base camp. By the way, it's a great tool for everybody. We already started like a virtual discussion there. So we're going to be digging deep into this mission and vision. You know, the mission and vision was created in 2014 in a city council retreat. They hired an external firm to help with this process. It was as part of developing the city's strategic plan. Back then, what is not clear if it was adopted via resolution or ordinance later on. We're going to be looking at the charter of the city for biases. We're going to be looking at the history of Brookhaven. As Mindy mentioned, we were looking at that side of the Brookhaven Historic District. We want to look at the Linwood Park Historic Designation, talk to the integrators of Linwood Park. We want to, since the city is so new, we want to make sure that we understand the origins of the city dating back to 2012 and before, and even the history that predated the creation of the city. And we want to make sure that we engage the public at some point and in some way in this discussion. So we still need to figure that out. But Basecamp has proven to be a very, very good tool for us. I encourage all the groups to use it. And that's it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good. All right. And next subcommittee up is a hiring policy. Commissioner Minor and Commissioner Naglich. I'm not sure which one is speaking.
This is Will Naglich. Can you all hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. Yeah, Tawana, she is in the car right now, so I'm going to cover this for her. The Hiring and Retention Subcommittee, we had our first meeting this past Monday. I had good attendance and made some progress. Prior to the meeting, we obtained a good deal of data from Brookhaven Human Resources. And at the meeting on Monday, our liaison, Helena Callis, presented a PowerPoint presentation regarding the initial data we received, which had some demographic information, the employee handbook, some information regarding retention of employees, race and gender demographics. It was really good having that conversation that everybody really participated in, because it brought up some questions and we realized there were some additional data that we needed, and some more context to information maybe from other municipalities, so we can compare and properly interpret the data that we have before us. We're also working with the subcommittee members to establish our meeting cadence going forward, as well as subcommittee work groups. We've also had really good experience thus far working with Basecamp, both for communications and document sharing. Chrysalis Labs has also assisted us with polling, which we're going to use to establish our future meetings. And we should have a survey to go out to the subcommittee members tomorrow, so we can set up that plan for going forward. With regard to the challenges, meeting schedules is definitely one of them for us. Everybody's busy schedule, as well as the numbers of meetings with the city, to get something where we can have the majority of the subcommittee members participate. And we really want to get context for the data presented, so we can identify the issues that really need to be addressed, so we can have something that's worthwhile for HR and potentially the other committees, that we could have some crossover working with them. And also breaking out the data for the various departments with the city. We realize that issues with park staff is likely to be different than with what they're dealing with the police department. So we're really trying to get more context so we can dig into that data and figure out next steps. Thank you.
Very helpful. Thank you very much. Our next committee is the Procurement and Policy. Commissioners Moses and Commissioner Thomas.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. The procurement and the procurement and contracting subcommittee has made some really good progress over the last month or so. We had our second meeting earlier this week. We got some really good feedback on some of the initial topics that we discussed in our first meeting. We were joined by Stephen Cosby. We also had the Assistant City Manager, Steve Chapman, join us as well again. We got some really good feedback from them, particularly around what are some ways that we could define social justice in terms of procurement and contracting. And we really rehashed some of the topics, again, that we discussed in the first meeting. We took a look at the actual website for the City of Brookhaven and the purchasing webpage, just to see how easy or difficult it would be to navigate if you are a potential vendor looking to place a bid for a contract for the city. And so that really gave us some insight as to the actual process that they go through. And there were some suggestions that came out of that. I know one suggestion was that we could possibly look at creating some type of common usage glossary for vendors. So that way it kind of makes every contract in plain language for everyone to kind of really read and understand, because we kind of identified that as one of the barriers potentially for the public. So we want to make sure we close that barrier. We also got a chance to get some information from an organization called Social Platform through the European Union. And that was something that was brought forth from Commissioner Moses. And that gave us some ideas as to what they were doing actually in Europe in terms of placing directives, particularly for procurement and contracting when it comes to the public. Just different ways that they can look at serving the public instead of serving cities. So for example, there was one directive that called for cities to base their decisions around contracting on in terms of the really the best interests of the public. So not always the lowest bidder or what was financially made the most sense, but looking at the actual effects of that particular service or contract on the citizens. So that was really useful as well. We still requested some additional data from the city when it came to contracts over the past 3 years. We already have some data from the past year in 2020, but I know Commissioner Funny asked for some additional data just so we could compare it and have a longer track record before we made any future recommendations. And we did come to an agreement to create a survey to really engage past vendors who've done business with the city and select 3 vendors. And then from there, we'll kind of get their feedback and create some survey questions. So I was really glad that we made progress on that. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Know that some people have some calendar issues, so we'd like to go next to police accountability and use of force. I don't know if Commissioner Reef or Commissioner Hudson Wright will be speaking.
Yeah, thank you. This is Commissioner Arif. So we had our first meeting last week on Wednesday. It was a really good meeting. We thought we had a really good presentation from Lieutenant Snively of the Brookhaven Police Department, who came in and kind of walked us through the statistics from last year about the demographic and makeup of the police force, the demographic and makeup of citations and arrests that were made, and then use of force that was used, and the demographic and makeup of that as well. And so that sparked a really interesting conversation amongst the subcommittee about, what that looks like and what it means, and kind of taking a look at both race and ethnicity, and even location of where those people who committed the crimes came from. Because one interesting fact we learned, I think it's something like 2/3 of all crimes that were committed that the police department where they made an arrest or a citation were people who weren't residents of Brookhaven. And so that's a little bit of challenge in kind of interpreting that and kind of lining that up against demographic data within the city, just to make sure that there's, equitable treatment there. All that to say, next steps from here, I think we have a pretty good action plan. There is a data transparency site And so there's some interesting information that we can make use of. We've identified, I think, 5 neighboring cities: Sandy Springs, Dunwoody, Norcross, Chamblee, and a couple others. And Major Harrell is helping us track down similar data as what they presented to us. So I think that'll be good to kind of compare ourselves to some of our neighboring cities as well, to see how we kind of stack up. The committee members are also tasked with some homework where we're all supposed to go and kind of do our own research and try to find some innovative police departments around the United States, see what they're doing, and see how we can incorporate, or if there is some work they're doing that we could incorporate. And then we are also, as a committee, going to be doing and undertaking the use of force training that the police department goes through. So there is a virtual session that we'll be doing just about the training of the policies and procedures that have been shared with us. And then many of us expressed interest to do the in-person simulation as well. Where we'll be going down to the police department and kind of going through the simulation training, which the police officers do live. So I think that's going to be really interesting because it's going to give us a lot of good insight into what training is actually given and how it's given, and just be able to take it live. So we're just kind of working through some scheduling with Major Harrell and Lieutenant Snively to make sure we can make that happen. In terms of challenges, I think it really is about understanding what's the gold standard to aspire to, right? So doing the comparative analysis around the cities that are around us in the state of Georgia, but also cities outside the state of Georgia that might be similar in size or demographic, and try to understand what kind of innovative policies they're putting in place and how we stack up against them and how our numbers stack up against them, to figure out, and kind of deep dive into what are issues that we might see doing that comparison, and then being able to make recommendations to the police department based on that. And I think that is it for my update. So thank you.
No, thank you, Commissioner Harf. We really appreciate it. And I appreciate all of you. I mean, not only have the co-chairs been working extraordinarily hard, both in facilitating and organizing the meetings, but obviously a lot of work in between meetings. And we're really, really grateful. And I think it's shown up in this discussion. I want to open it up for questions and comments, both from other members of the various committees, things that you want to raise up, that you want to highlight, comments that you heard that you might want to adopt for your committee. One thing that we talked about at Chrysalis this week, and I think this goes to Commissioner Arif's comment, we all have been watching the news this week about the killing of Dwayne Wright. And one of the things that came to mind to us, we started talking about that Brooklyn Center is a small city. It's a city of 35,000 people on the outskirts of Minneapolis, similar to Brookhaven. And so you just don't know. I mean, these issues that sometimes people in communities think are relegated to large cities, and these challenges and need to be prepared and thoughtful and creative. Doesn't matter what size community you are. These are our communities and our neighbors, and we need to be thoughtful. And I appreciate your thoughtfulness as you tackled some very difficult issues in preparation for getting ahead of trying to be progressive in our thought and our actions in our communities. So thank you. Questions? Just raise your hand and Mindy or I will see you, or comments that you want to share. I'm going to call on Christian if I don't see anyone else. Make sure that I acknowledge the commissioners. Okay, Christian.
Just real quick, just to reassess and make sure the liaisons are getting all the committees what they need. And if not, give me a call. As it relates to the hiring committee, we talked with our search firm today. We're actually looking for a new human resources director. Rick Stone will be retiring the end of June. And we were talking about the recruitment profile, the background of the city. What do we want in our next HR director? And we started to talk about Social Justice, Race and Equity Commission, because they asked, what are the challenges for the next HR director? And I said, they're going to have to implement whatever comes out of the commission. And I said, well, why don't we share that draft recruitment profile with the subcommittee? they thought that was a good idea. So when it gets done next week, we're going to actually share the recruitment profile, which will go nationwide, looking for our next HR director. And one of the specific things we'll be looking for is somebody who's familiar with the concepts, but also can implement and embrace whatever comes out of this commission.
Commissioner Jones had a question. No.
I think he asked his question in the chat, which was around. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was excited by that, the coming police use of force training that was presented in the policing and continuum of force subcommittee. And I'm wondering, can the public be included?
Yeah, sorry. So this is Commissioner Arif. So I'll work with Major Harold. The first session is virtual, so I think it should be pretty easy to expand that. And I'll work with Major Harold to figure out how we can expand the in-person option for the actual simulation. I think she had been planning for just kind of the committee members. And so I just want to touch base with her to make sure timings and they have some COVID precautions in the police department as well, that we can kind of maintain all that. And then I can report back to the group for what that looks like.
That'd be great. I'm going to follow up. There may be 8 of you in that subcommittee. I'll follow up. Thank you.
So the folks who go through the Citizen Police Academy go through that. The police explorers go through that. Obviously, anybody on the commission can go through that. We really don't have a policy for the general public to go through it because, one, it has to be staffed, and I'm not sure we have the bandwidth to just have it as an on-demand thing to the general public, but we can explore that.
Thank you.
And just so that everyone is clear, the question that came in is from a public attendee, Mr. Nelson Jones. He wasn't a commissioner, but I think as Kristen just mentioned, they have a citizen group that they take through the process. And I'm sure Kristen will work with the police department to figure out how to get citizens who would like to attend the training session to be facilitated.
Any other comments or questions before we move on our agenda?
I'll just say that it was comforting to hear hiring's update and just knowing that it seems like they're kind of tracking with us a little bit. You know, they got some data and then they realized, oh, you know what, we have some more questions. Can you get us this data and that data? So yes, feel good about that.
Right. And Commissioner Corrello shared some information about an NPR piece that might be interesting for those of you who are either on the police subcommittee or have an interest in that work. So thank you. All right. Well, we appreciate everyone's thoughtfulness and most importantly for your hard work, because again, I know that this is taking time way more than just attending commission meetings, and you're doing a lot of thought and strategizing and research outside of your subcommittees, but that is going to continue to be evident in the solutions that are coming forth. It's very exciting. And we were talking in our meeting that, you know, there's very few times that we get a diverse group of people in a community who care about the same things, who are working so diligently. And this is, like Leslie has said, it's extraordinarily inspiring. So thank you all. So with that said, I'm going to turn it back over to Commissioner Funny to introduce our speaker.
Thank you, Kim. And let me echo the sentiment to all the co-chairs. Great job, and all the subcommittees. This is where the work is happening. This is where the work is taking place, and you guys are doing a superb job. I appreciate your commitment to this effort. And we really appreciate the city personnel, Kristen and your team, the staff liaison. They've been very forthcoming with data. Thank you guys so much. I'm trying to catch up on all the readings. And Kristen, thank you very much, you and your liaisons. Each of you have been so supportive with this effort. So thank each of you. And I would confess, I didn't make it to the Vision and Mission Subcommittee meeting. I've been trying to bounce around, but I will be at the next one. I had a schedule conflict. just to show support from the chair and letting you know that I really appreciate each of you. So next up, I'm going to introduce our speaker for this evening, and this is such an honor. We are pleased to welcome Doug Hooker, the Executive Director of the Atlanta Regional Commission. To many of us, we call it ARC for short. Doug will tell you more about ARC. However, it is the agency that coordinates local government policy and planning for Metro Atlanta to enhance the region's economic competitiveness. The ARC represents and serves 10 counties and 69 cities in our region. He manages a board that's made up of county commissioners, mayors, and civic leaders. Doug has worked for public sector and private sector organizations, including as commissioner of Atlanta's Department of Public Works, leading the agency through the 1996 Olympic Games. He served as executive director of the State Road and Tollway Authority and vice president for business development and marketing with Atkins Engineering, which was formerly PBS&J. He serves on the board of the Council for Quality Growth, the Georgia Tech President's Advisory Board, the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra Board. He is an accomplished musician and symphony composer, and the Community Foundation for Greater Atlanta. He has received numerous awards and recognitions, including the 100 Most Influential Georgians, 100 Most Influential Atlantans, and 10 Most Influential Atlantans, and the Excellence in City Government Award from the Atlanta City Council. And I have a personal connection with Doug Hooker. We go back many years. Doug Hooker, should I say my cousin, served as Commissioner of Public Works for the City of Atlanta under the Maynard Jackson first term, and then Andy Young second term, should I say Andy Young mayoral term, and then he served under Maynard Jackson's second term election, and then he served up until, I believe, Shirley Franklin. And then come Doug Hooker, who took the place of my cousin. So we have that attachment. And then Doug, when he served as the business development director for one of the largest respected engineering firms here in Atlanta, my firm got to work with Doug's firm. So I've known Doug a long time. So join me in welcoming Doug Hooker. Doug, are you here?
I'm right here, John.
How are
I don't know
you?
if everybody can see me. Hopefully everybody can see me.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that gracious introduction. And I'm going to suggest that the commissioners consider replacing you for wasting their time with that long and unnecessary introduction. However, I will accept the long friendship part for sure. Let me offer a few context things, and then I'll offer some comments. And when Leslie asked me to do this and invited me to do this, she knows, of course, I'm no expert on anything other than my lived experience as a Black man and a professional. But she thought I might have, through my experience in my current role, some thoughts to offer to you all. And so I'm going to endeavor to do that in a way that I hope is helpful. Context: the Atlanta region is 10 counties, but we are now 74 cities, not 69 anymore. And as of July 1st, we will have 11 counties. Forsyth County petitioned to come into the region last year. That petition went through legislation. This year's General Assembly, it was passed overwhelmingly, and we don't think the governor's going to sign it. We expect he's going to sign it. And with that, July 1st, we will expand from 10 counties to 11 counties, which is the first time since 1993 when Cherokee County came into the Atlanta region. So, and as John said very ably, our principal role is to facilitate conversations, debate and decision-making by local elected leaders in the 10 county, soon to be 11 county region that will help guide the growth, hopefully the quality growth of this region. And our portfolio includes a number of things that people are very familiar with. Transportation is what we often get mentioned with in the news, but it also includes aging services and support for seniors, older adults, and disabled residents, regardless of age. We do that for the 10-county region. A lot of people aren't aware of that, and that's actually the largest part of my budget and my staff, believe it or not. We do workforce development for a big part of the region. We coordinate Homeland Security, and so the law enforcement issue is also very near and dear to us, although we are not ourselves law enforcement officers, but we coordinate law enforcement training and equipping specifically under guidelines from the Department of Homeland Security to prepare for responses to domestic or international terrorist events, or I should say inspired terrorism events. And we also are the long range water planning agency for much of the region. All right, so with all of that, we managed to sit at a lot of tables and have a lot of conversations. For us as a staff, for our board of 39 commissioners, because they are called a board of commissioners, last summer was, I think, as it was for many of you who are participating in this, it was a cause for us to pause and reflect on what are we doing in our work to be sure we're helping to advance social and racial equity and not put up unnecessary barriers and hindrances, and not just be passive about it, not just removing obstacles, but being trying to be proactive. And so we have embarked on our own effort that we calling our IDEA effort, IDEA, which stands for Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, and Anti-Racism. And one of your commissioners, Aixa Pascual, is a new colleague of ours, and we're very happy to have her. She's bringing a wealth of wisdom and experience and commitment to our team. And so we're very happy to have her. And our IDEA initiative is fairly new, just started late last year, but we have an employee committee that's doing that work. And we're doing some very interesting things. But what Leslie asked me to talk to you about was some perspectives about equity in the public sector. And so I begin with, first of all, applauding you as residents and the leaders of Brookhaven's government and community for doing this. I'm not aware of, that's not to say there's not another, but I'm not aware of another formal community-led equity examination or evaluation of a local community, local city or county. This, if there is one, it's certainly much more quiet than what you're doing. And I applaud you for not only doing it, but doing it in the public eye where people can access and hear your deliberations, your conversations, and you're obviously taking it very seriously by the quality of people who come forth to volunteer to be on the commission. So, so kudos to you, and chances are you're going to be called upon to help teach other local governments, or at least share other governments, how you are moving along, how you decided to come to this and move along with it. But I am aware to some degree with 3 other major metro areas that are pursuing equity initiatives, and there are many across the country. So I'm just giving you a slight little off the top of the head of cities that I'm aware of a little bit more. One that you probably are already familiar with, and is Austin, Texas. And Austin has been on this journey actually for probably about 3 or 4 years, but long before the social unrest and protests of last summer. And in doing so, they determined that it was critically important for them to make and reflect equity and equitable type decisions throughout their entire government structure. And so what they've done is worked with the Government Alliance on Race and Equity, GARE, GARE. And you guys may be familiar with them already. But they've worked with GARE and worked with their various departments and constituents and their council to develop a mission that they hope is based in equity, and an assessment tool by which they have asked every department as part of the Austin city government to look at their work and develop equity related or equity respected goals. And then those will be published and they will be reporting out on those annually and in a way that the constituents and the residents of Austin can see what progress is or is not being made, can offer comment as to whether they agree or disagree with it, and whether that reflects the values of that community and its commitment. And so I commend that to you. I am no expert on how successful it's going to be or has been, but I know that it's widely looked to by a lot of other leaders, city leaders across the country. So that may be one you want to look to. There's you mentioned already Albuquerque. I believe somebody mentioned Albuquerque earlier. I'm not familiar with the details of Albuquerque's effort, but again, I do know that they have been looked to as a national model. Now, I'm going to tell you, this is a personal pet peeve of Doug Hooker. I reject the word best practices when it comes to equity work. And the reason I do so is because nobody's figured it all out yet. Best practices in my mind are the things that we know for sure work. And so somebody can learn from that and replicate it in their situation. So I refrain from using the term best practices. You may feel free to do whatever you want to. But when it comes to equity work, I don't say that. I should say there's been some things that have been successful that probably want to be imitated or replicated. And there's been some things that are probably unsuccessful that you probably want to learn from and avoid. And so with that, but again, Albuquerque is another city that's looked to. A city that I'm a little bit more familiar with because we spent some time in it is the city of Pittsburgh. 2 years ago, as a part of our annual programming, we take a group of 100+ leaders to different regions each year. Last year was canceled because of the pandemic. But the year before that, 2019, we went to the city of Pittsburgh and spent a lot of time with Pittsburgh leaders across all sectors of the community. And Pittsburgh started their own equity journey. And quite honestly, they started it because of the decline in their population. And what they had recognized is that doing an analysis of their population, they had lost a lot of their middle class and educated young African-American talent. And in fact, the mayor of Pittsburgh said to us in his opening remarks, if you want to ask the question, where is the young African-American talent of Pittsburgh? It's in Atlanta, because that's where most of our young people go to. And it was that examination and realization that they were not going to be a thriving city if they did not address their issues surrounding equity and racial justice. And again, long before the social protests of last year, they've been actually on this journey for about 5 or 6 years now. And the current mayor is the mayor under whose term this whole examination started. And they had developed a guiding principle that if it's not for all of us, it's not for us. And by that, they meant if their policy, if their work, if their resource investments weren't being done and thought of and made possible for all Pittsburgh residents to access and have equal opportunity to enjoy, then it's not something they should be doing. Now, the reality is they're far from that, and they will tell you that very much themselves. But that concept, that equity commitment and initiative that they have developed was done jointly with tops and grassroots leaders over several years of dialogue and development. And so in every conversation we were in, whether it's in a private conversation, small group, large group, you hear community leaders say, if it's not for all of us, it's not for us. They have developed a community, a widespread community ethos. Now, it's not ideal and it's not rose tinted because there's a lot of grassroots and community leaders who say, yes, we've heard it and we believe that's what they intend, but we haven't fully seen it expressed yet. But we're waiting and we're hopeful. And so I offer that to you by way of sharing something else about this. This is work that will take a long time. However successful you are, and I have no doubt that you will be in coming out with recommendations for how Brookhaven can begin to adapt, readapt, or change some of its practices and systems. However successful you are, do not believe or assume that the end of this process is the end of your work. It may be the end of this commission, but it cannot be the end of the city's work and the community's work if it is to be sustainable and viable. So I have a personal belief, again, I'm speaking as Doug Hooker. I have a personal belief that equity and social equity, racial equity change must happen along 3 lines. Personal change, that is, people must be open to being educated, learning more about why we have systems in equity. And it's not just a Brookhaven issue, it's a United States issue. Why do we have these systems of inequity? And how did they develop over 400 years? And then community change, if we're open, if we're learning, and we want to do something, how then we begin to have our community change, our community, its governments, its leadership, its institutions change to represent what this community values by way of trying to be an equitable and inclusive community. And interpersonal change. Your city change is clearly orchestrated, organized, but what will you also be doing in terms of trying to bring about and start community change? So it's broader than just the city. And I would say that you have set up 4 subcommittees that I have seen. And I think that's really great because you can't boil the whole ocean. You can't change everything all at once. But I do suggest, if this has not already been part of your work, I know you're going to do community engagement later on, but if this work is to have a life beyond the commission that people grasp onto, commit to, and help to carry forward when you are no longer in seats of community leadership to help lead it, then get voices in the room early. And specifically, I'm thinking about employee voices right now, because at least 3 of your 4 subcommittees speak to actual processes of government, hiring, procurement, police and law enforcement practice. Have you heard from the people who you are asking and will be expecting to make change, how they would like to be a part of that change to the city? Don't get too far down the road with being prescriptive without inviting them in to express it. And don't be dismayed when you get a few who rush, who want to help you be right there, and then some who are skeptical. And then there's going to be some, quite honestly, who just outright refuse to be a part of it. But they at least need to have the respect of having their opinions, their desires expressed, because those are the people you're going to be depending on with whatever you recommend to your city leadership. Those are going to be people you're depending on to help carry this through. And there will be some who very much believe in it, like I said, and are ready to be there. Change, organizational change, whether it's in a city or government, whether it's in a private sector organization, it's a nonprofit, doesn't make any difference. There are elements about change that are really critical. You're going to always have people who your first adapters, who are already there with you in spirit, or intellectually, or who may not even fully understand it, but they like what they hear and they want to be a part of trying to understand it and make it possible. That is probably not going to be more than 20% of your overall employee population. The biggest group are going to be the ones who, I believe you, but I'm not sure. I've heard so many initiatives come and go. I want to see if this is really real and if it's going to stick. And thus, you want to invite them to be in and be patient with them, get their ideas, so that as they begin to see they're being listened to and help being a part of making this vision that this commission is developing, that they are going to come to it. And there's going to be part of that body that's skeptical. I believe you, but is it going to really work? I want to believe you, but is it really going to work? I'm going to wait, and I'm not going to emotionally commit until I've seen that you're actually doing things that I can believe, that show me the proof. Don't just talk to me, show it to me. And then, like I said, there's always going to be a group, and it's probably going to be about 10 or 15% of the employee body who say, it's not for me. I don't care. And either I'm just going to stick it out here and outweight you, or I'm going to opt to leave. That's what happens when you change cultures in organizations. So I say all that, don't be dismayed or discouraged by all that, but do think about that. And at your earliest possible opportunity, when you start doing community engagement, invite the employees to be very much a part of the listening. To me, equity and change work along the racial equity lines has to be fundamentally based in the act of listening with love and patience. Because we all have gotten to here through life experiences that are varied and different, some very traumatic, some very unaware of other people's experiences in life. And what you're trying to do is address systems that have been built up over 400 years of time. And you're not going to solve that problem in 1 year, 5 years, 10 years. It's going to be generational change. And hopefully you have the realization and the belief that what you're setting up is generational change for Brookhaven to be a more equitable community out into the future because of what you start here, but not expecting that it's going to end here. I'm sorry, I'm rambling on right now a little bit, and I apologize for that. One of the things in preparing for this evening, I talked to Leslie and I said, I'm interested in knowing what is the Brookhaven community, residents at large, what are they thinking about this initiative? What are their ideas about where they want to see equitable change? And again, you can't boil the ocean, but you want to do this in a way, obviously, that brings them along, that has their full support and engagement. And it can't all come through these meetings. You have a wonderful university in your community, Oglethorpe, and I know you have a new president. I don't know the new president, so I can't speak to their commitment to this or their support for you. I can't imagine that they would be against it. But I imagine that there are probably a lot of students and faculty at Oglethorpe who would love to be a part of helping understand what the Brookhaven community wants to see by way of equitable change. So invite them. You use the civic dinner model that several organizations, ARC started this and kind of made it popular, but it wasn't our brainchild about 5 years ago. Use a civic dinner model of small conversations over the age-old hospitality tradition of sharing a meal. Sharing a meal with strangers is a place of neutrality and a safe space. And ask Oglethorpe if they're willing to help you set up a series of these dinners to talk about and share what your equity aspirations are as a commission and invite their thoughts too. Because everything about the city isn't going to be changed strictly through these four committees. And you know that, you understand that. But you might also hear what other things that are pressing in residents' minds that may not have filtered through or may not have come through. And is it something that you can incorporate in your work, or at least acknowledge that you heard it and a subsequent phase of work will have to take it up? But that way the community knows that they're being heard too. And those students and faculty who work with you to help as volunteers to do something like that, I say help. I don't know if the president will allow it, but let's assume that they will at least be willing to be hosts for some of that activity. I'm sure there are students there and faculty who'd be willing to volunteer to help with that process. And we would be happy to help just give you a basic understanding of how to train for that if you care to do it. But in addition to that, you're talking about hiring, and you can probably identify some bright young minds who would love when they volunteer to be part of the work and the activity around the Social Justice and Racial Equity Commission, who are going to emotionally commit to wanting to stay in Brookhaven and stay around Brookhaven as they begin their careers, and maybe even be hired at Brookhaven, so they can help continue the work that you're starting. And again, I'm probably being a little bit all around the place here, but let me stop there. I know I haven't addressed everything Leslie asked me to address because I can't remember everything she told me, but John, if you want to ask me some questions or want me to take on some additional topics, feel free to invite me to do that.
Thank you, Doug. I really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us this evening. And thank you for those I call them tidbit hinters. That's really helpful for us, as this is new. And this is something that we're embarking upon where none of us has done this before. So I appreciate you sharing the 3 cities that you referenced. And I appreciate you talking about the 3 changes: personal change, community change, and interpersonal change. That means a lot to us because we realize it's not just one individual, it goes far beyond that. And we appreciate the hint about getting voices in the room early. We're going to work on that. We're working with Leslie and her team to roll out our robust public involvement component. So that's going to be very, very helpful. Oglethorpe is with us. We have a commissioner who's actually Dr. Williams. He's actually on the leadership team at Oglethorpe. And he dropped his president's name in, and when he came aboard, they were very supportive. And they've just recently hired a new diversity chief officer. She reached out to me and would like to get engaged. So thank you for, again, dropping us that hint. So I do have a couple of questions for you, Doug. I hope you will. Why is it important for municipalities to adopt an equity lens?
Oh, okay. All right. Yes, you're right. That's one of the things that Leslie asked me to speak to. So I apologize that I failed to do that. So, let me begin with what I think all of you probably already feel, that there's a fundamental human moral and ethical imperative. It's easy for us to recognize when other cultures are leaving major segments of their population behind. We think about some countries where women don't have the same kinds of rights and the same kind of accessibility. One of the things about Bosnia that people don't necessarily appreciate it, that after the civil war that tore Yugoslavia apart and Bosnia came, and then Bosnia had its own civil war. When that was settled, part of their settlement was, and it was written into the Constitution, that women had to have at least 33% of all elected positions in parliament and government, at least. Could have more, but never less. And that was because women had traditionally been left on the sidelines in Bosnia. And okay, the same imperative is here in our country, in our society. We say, well, you can access all this stuff and it's, you have equal opportunity. But the fact of the matter, there's been a lot of systemic barriers built in for Black and brown children from the beginning. And I won't go through the cycle of inequity, but I can show you an inequitable life cycle where from the very beginning of birth, where a Black child only has less than a 25% chance of inheriting anything from the prior generation, to when they get to adolescence and enter teenage years. By the time they get to be a young adult, they're 6 times more likely to have been engaged in the juvenile justice system, far out of proportion to their representation in the population. 2, they're 2 times harder for them to access credit. There's all these kinds of things. They're less than 40% chance that they will ever own a home, and therefore they don't have what's necessary in terms of equity to help their children to build up educational opportunities, job opportunities, and have wealth be built up to pass on for the next generation, and the cycle repeats itself. So there's all the moral and ethical arguments, but the fundamental economic imperative is also prevalent. In 2016, I actually had my research staff do an exercise. They're all very committed to equity in themselves, but yes, I see that. I will send Leslie and Kim the information of that inequitable life cycle, so you can see that for yourself. And I know you have Mike Carnathan come and present some things to you too as well. And Mike is my research chief. In 2016, I asked them to do an exercise in economic analysis. We have several economists on staff, and I said, let's assume that African Americans and Latino Americans living in the 10-county metropolitan Atlanta region have the same spread of income and wealth as their white counterparts. That is, whatever the average income is for the bottom 25% of whites, let's put African Americans there. Whatever it is for the 50% median, let's put African Americans there. So in other words, spread out the population and spread out their income in the same proportion that whites experience it here in the region. What would be the difference in our economy? Better, no different, worse? Well, what it came back with was, if that were the situation and Black and brown residents were earning, households were earning at the same wage rates as their white counterparts, our economy would have been 27% stronger. That is, our GDP as a region would have been 27% higher. That ought to tell us something. Equity and inclusion and removing barriers to equal and fair access for people who have been left on the sidelines or been denied is not only a moral, although fundamentally that for me, that's the most important thing, not only a moral proposition, but it's fundamentally a good economic proposition. We need to unleash the opportunity for Black and brown children to grow up and have their full potential economically, as well as human beings contributing in our society. And we're rapidly becoming, we already are, by the way, we already are a majority minority region by absolute population. By 2050, roughly 30 years from now, 70% of all residents in the Atlanta region, and I'm actually talking about the 20 county area that we plan transportation for. John is familiar with that. But the 20 county metropolitan region will be 70% people of color, that is African American, Hispanic, and Asian American and multicultural peoples. 70%. If we don't change their economic trajectory, then what we are projecting is that we will be a much poorer community per capita than we are now. A lot more people with a lot less money and resources because a lot of potential is being left on the sideline. So whether you buy into, whether any of your neighbors buy into the moral or ethical perspective on this question, the fundamental economic argument is undeniable. So cities, and I think a lot of city leaders that are moving toward this more rapidly recognize that imperative. That minority people are our future, period. You don't want all of us to be poor. Everybody's not going to be rich, but everybody needs to have access to be able to improve their lives. And right now, there's too many systemic barriers. We've lost middle wage jobs dramatically. And the gap between the richest and the poorest in this region, as well as the whole country, has only just widened dramatically. We've got to change that trajectory over the next 10, 20, 30 years. Otherwise, it'll be a future that we won't want our children and our grandchildren to own. So anyway, I'm sorry. You asked me a simple question. I gave you a dissertation.
That was really good. Thank you for your perspective on that. That really shed the light on this region as this region changes. So thank you for sharing that. That was wonderful. One other question, and I'm going to call on the commissioners when I'm done to see if they have any comments or questions. But one more question for you. What advice can you offer to someone in a social justice, race, and equity commissioner role specifically?
What advice can I offer to them?
Yes.
Don't keep your role invisible. No doubt your immediate circle of family and friends are probably aware of what you're doing, but share it everywhere that you exist, everywhere that you show up in your lives. Don't be quiet about it. And not so much from a boasting fashion, but just a matter of you feel that you're doing something that's critically, fundamentally important for Brookhaven, the future of Brookhaven, and the future of this region and this nation. And encouraging other people, whether they're residents of Brookhaven, to be engaged by watching, listening, offering their thoughts. If they're not resident of Brookhaven, encourage them to think about trying to start something in their own communities, in their own families. Race is a topic that we have for many hundreds of years said we don't talk about it in polite company. Well, all we were doing is just trying to sweep under the carpet what was wrong. There's never a problem that's been solved in the history of the world by ignoring it. This is a major problem, and this is a time in our society, in our country, where there are a large proportion of the people who live here that are ready to talk about the question, but don't feel safe talking about it. They don't know how to talk about it. They don't know how to start. You can be that bridge to help them start talking about it, but only if you're willing to share what you're thinking about, what you're learning, what you're wrestling with. It's not that you agree with everything, but the fact that you're engaged and you're wrestling with it. The world is moved forward by people who show up, not people who withstand. So that's the first thing I would say. And I think that's the most important thing. Make your participation here a highly visible part of your life that you're proud of and that you share, and that you encourage others to think about how they might do something like this in their own personal spaces. So anyway, sorry.
Great, thank you. Bill, are you busy? You want to join a commission? I have this commission. I need.
I was listening to your reports, and I wanted to offer you one thought, and it was specifically for the Policing and Law Enforcement Subcommittee, but it's actually for the commission as a whole. You may not know or be aware that the National Center for Civil and Human Rights, right here in our own backyard, has developed a law enforcement DEI training program that they're getting called to do more for different law enforcement agencies around the country. I think it's worth a conversation just to find out what they're doing and how they're approaching it. I can tell you from the little bit that I know, and I'm not an expert on it, but I have spent some time talking with some of their staff about it. Part of their approach, a big fundamental part of their approach, is helping law enforcement officers understand the origins of law enforcement in this country, because a lot of people don't know that. And when you understand that law enforcement, particularly as it's expressed in the South, is slightly different in the North, but it has similar kinds of elements. But in the South, law enforcement started actually as slave patrols. And there were people who were formerly paid by the community and plantation owners to go after runaway slaves, and also to go after slave owners who weren't reinforcing community norms with regard to how slaves were supposed to be treated. It later became full-time law enforcement, not just vigilante. And so in the period of post-Civil War, when the Ku Klux Klan arrived, and into as far as the 50s and 60s, a lot of law enforcement personnel were members of their local Klan or other kinds of organizations that were against the advancement of civil rights. And so here we've come to the 21st century, and people think, no, everything's changed. Well, everything hasn't changed. It's not, and I'm not saying that the law enforcement people have that mindset. So please don't take that away. That's not what I'm saying. But a lot of their systems of practice and culture and belief around how to enforce and who to enforce and what to enforce sprung from an origin about slave patrols. And when law enforcement officers begin to understand some of that, then it's easier, I think, for them to begin, at least the ones who want to begin to tease out what aspects of that culture have come forward that we need to re-examine and change. So, and I know that's part of the training that the National Center for Civil and Human Rights is doing. So I would just offer that you might want to have Jill Savitt, who's the CEO there, or some member of her staff come and spend some time with the law enforcement subcommittee or the policing subcommittee, just to get a better understanding of what they're doing, what's possible there. So now, any questions? I'm sorry.
Thank you. Any questions for Doug from the commission? Any question from the commission?
I have a question for Christian Sigmund. Christian, are you listening?
There he is.
Okay. I just want to know if he's a Skyline or a Gold Star chili guy.
So for context, Doug and I met, oh my goodness, probably 7-8 years ago when I was the county administrator in Hamilton County, Ohio, which is Cincinnati, and Doug is from Cincinnati, I believe, right?
That's right. It's where I grew up.
And every major metropolitan area has a MPO, a Metropolitan Planning Organization, and it's an invaluable organization, and successful communities have a very strong MPO. and Atlanta has one of the best. And I met Doug when I came on a leadership exchange. They call them link exchanges here.
That's right.
And about 3 years after that, I essentially moved to Georgia and immediately engaged the MPO because they do good work. And actually, Doug was one of the first people I reached out to when I said I wanted to do, well, I proposed to the city council, we do, if we're going to do, quote, a race commission, let's do this correctly. And the people who know how to do that are people like Doug Hooker. So I reached out to Doug, and Doug gave me some advice. He connected me with some other people. I've been doing boards and commissions for 30 years, but to do it right, you have to do the work up front to define it and think about it, who's going to be at the table, and have resources available and all that kind of stuff. So Doug was invaluable. But back to your question, I started as a Gold Star fan. I ended as a Skylines fan, and when I get back to Cincinnati, I do both.
Very diplomatic. You have to know Cincinnati cuisine. Cincinnati chili is a very peculiar and very hyper-local thing, and there are two major chains of chili restaurants, and you have to be one or the other. You can't be in between. Anyway,
I just wanted to say,
oh, okay.
Mr. Hooker, as a Cincinnati native, it is Skyline only.
Skyline only, yes. There you go, Dean.
Skyline only and Grippo's potato chips.
All right, I think we're going to get along well here.
So all I'm going to say is,
Commissioner Funny, I hope you don't mind, but I used to be the city manager in Cincinnati, and have to weigh in and say it's Skyline chili.
Wonderful, wonderful.
So Kristen, here's how we're going to settle this. I think we need a field trip to Cincinnati for the commission.
I will do you one better. I have the recipe for Skyline chili. I host a Halloween party for Friends on the Street here in Brookhaven, and we serve Skyline chili, authentic. I will host the entire commission when we can get back together again. We will come to City Hall because chili is cheap to make. Let's face it. The city of Brookhaven will host a chili dinner for the entire commission at City Hall when we can get back together.
Okay, and be sure I get
And
my
I'm
invitation
coming,
too.
Christian. I'm coming down from Ohio.
All right.
Okay, I'm sorry for that little bit of silliness.
That's good. Yes, we have a question for you, Doug.
Yes.
Well,
Rabbi.
first of all, just for the record, as a native Detroiter, the Detroit chili is 1,000 times better than the Ohio chili. So for the
There
record,
always has to be one. Remember what I said about the early adopters, the skeptics, and the never changers? So
Coney Island chili in Detroit's better, but whatever. And I also have a recipe, but because I keep kosher, so ours is a little different. But regardless of all of that, when you touched on the idea of the economic value of equity, right, as being a reason, to me, it seems coming from that point of view undermines what we're trying to achieve, right? If we can only approach this because of the moral reason, it's similar to a person who is a homophobe, and then suddenly their child comes out of the closet and like, yeah, homosexuals are great, right? Because it became convenient for them. To me, if we approach it because of an economic advantage, we're missing the entire point. We're not seeing them as people. We're seeing them as potential money.
Rabbi, I wholeheartedly agree with you, but I will say to you that in the line of work that I do, I know that you can't always approach some people directly with a moral or ethical argument. You have to meet them where they are. And when I can meet them where they are, and if that's an economic argument, and hopefully help them move to the moral and ethical imperative, then I've gotten them there, however get them. But I start with where they can be met. And some people you can't start with the moral or ethical, or you can start there, but it's a waste of your time. So at the end of the day, for me, it's about trying to get a result. And if I can get the result by inducing them to come in through the economic door and hope that they move to the moral and ethical door, I'll take that as long as I get them to move. So I don't disagree with your perspective. In fact, I wholeheartedly agree with it. I just don't exclude the other as a way to talk about it. And again, I say to you, as commissioners, you always have your personal point of view about this work and how to approach it. But part of, Doug Hooker again, not ARC, not scholarship, but Doug Hooker, part to me of change, racial equity, social equity change is listening with love and patience and recognizing that everybody is not in the same place at the same time. Try to meet them where they are. If they're open to the conversation, they're open to listening, they're open to learning, and then help them move to where you would help them hope that they would come to be. So that's all. That's the only reason I offer that, because I'm often in rooms where I have to start with the economic argument because the moral and the ethical doesn't work. My preference is to start with the moral and the ethical.
Thank you. Any other questions for Doug Hooker?
I do. It's Commissioner Todd here. That was great information, Mr. Hooker. And Rabbi, I agree with you. And, you know, we call that, especially when we're doing diversity work inside of an organization, often we have to toe the line of the economic or the business case is what they call it. And we have to remind ourselves, because I can get pulled into it's the right thing to do, but we just constantly have to remind ourselves, do you want to be right or do you want to be effective? Because you're right, but if it doesn't change and they can't, you know, we say the same thing of meeting them where they are. And it's really difficult when you know that the right thing to do for so many reasons, you know, it's a moral issue. But so many, if folks believe that, we wouldn't even be having this commission.
Right. Agree. I agree with you, Commissioner. Yeah.
Thank you for that comment. We appreciate it. Anyone else? Any other questions or comments?
I'll mention something. Hey, Doug, this is Anibal.
Anibal, how are you?
Good to see you.
Good to see you, my friend.
Yeah, thank you. You know, I was on that Pittsburgh trip, and those words really stay with us. You know, if it's not for all, if it's not for all, it's not for us. And
right.
that was such a strong statement from that trip.
Right.
And I'm glad you brought it up because, you know, that was certainly something that stayed with me, and it led us to do a couple of things when we came back, and we had some post meetings about that trip. But again, you know, thanks for reminding me of that trip, because it was very good to learn what they're doing and how they trying to get the community together. And so.
Good to see you. And
yep.
And I think I owe you a phone call anyway.
Okay. Hey, I read about your future today in the paper, so you know.
Yeah, I'll be joining you soon on the other side.
That's right.
I'm still trying to.
Hello, good to see you as well. Commissioner Danita Knight posted a hello. I just want to acknowledge to her that I saw it. Thank you.
Sure, not a problem. All right. Well, we want to thank Doug Hooker for his time to spend time with us. Doug, I'm going to be calling you. You have a lot of insightful thoughts, a lot of knowledge, and I want to be able to have conversation and dialogue, which will help me in my role as chair with this task that we have encroached. So thank you for your time, and we really appreciate you coming and spending some time with us. And keep up with us. Let us know what we're doing. Send us a note. And let us know.
I talk to Leslie frequently. I don't talk to Kim as often, but whenever Rotary can convene again, I'll see Kim on Mondays, and then I can bother her for sure.
Awesome. And I would say, as Commissioner Torres said, I did read the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, and they did make reference to you retiring in May of 2022. You're too young to retire, Doug, and you have so much. Your experience and wisdom and knowledge has really done really well for this region. And I need to talk to you about that plan for retirement. I don't know what that's all about, but
you probably have a few allies on that, John. So we'll have the conversation. I'm always
we will have the conversation.
Listening with love. Yes, time to compose more music. Absolutely.
Thank you much, Doug. I appreciate you.
Thank you all, and best wishes. And I really applaud you again for what you're doing. It will be an example for many other cities in this region, and I can't wait to see how you will help to change the tide here. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, at this time, we will go into our public comment component of our meeting. And just for the record, I will read our articles as it relates to the public comment. If you wish to make a comment during the public comment portion of this meeting, you may do so by one of four methods. You may email us at sjrec@brookhaven.gov. You can visit the city's social justice, race, and equity website and submit a comment. You can write your comment in the Zoom chat section, or you can raise your hand in Zoom at the appropriate time, which is now, and request to speak during the public comment portion of this meeting. Please be respectful and courteous as you are addressing this body. Any unruly, rude, or profanity-laced comments will be muted or removed from the Zoom meeting session. Please govern yourself accordingly. Jalissa, do we have any public comment? I know we got one email.
Yes. First, we have the email that came in earlier this week from District 1 resident Jason Talley. So if they are in the audience, this is their time to speak. They're number one on the list since they emailed earlier in the week. So Jason Talley, going once, going twice. All right, next we have Nelson Jones. I will just say if Jason Talley is listening and wants to do their comment, I'll be checking. But Nelson Jones is next.
Okay, Mr. Jones?
Unmuted. Okay, thank you so much for the opportunity in this public comment section. Thank you, Commissioner Funny, for the opportunity. I'm really impressed with the progress that's been made. And I really wanted to underscore just a couple points that I thought I'd piggyback on, that I saw that really stood out. They came from the third meeting back in February, right after the cast book acknowledgement. And Miss Kathy Wells really hit a blaring example of the caste system here in Brookhaven. I don't know that many people notice that there are 50 or more Starbucks on Peachtree through Peachtree Industrial and absolutely none on Beaufort Highway. And she pointed that out. Miss Kathy Wells is in policing and the continuum of force. Subsequently, she also pointed out the disparity in the integration of Montclair and Ashford Park schools. And I thought that was really a vivid example of the caste system. And I wanted to piggyback those things because Miss Kathy Wells hit it right on the head. Another point was, and there were a few things that broadened my lens, to coin Miss Connie Todd's expression. And I'm just going to hit one or two. But when Miss Monique Hudson Wright commented about having, not just formulating potential policies, but having the city be accountable to those policies. That's going to be a major thing, having the city be accountable, in conjunction with what Reverend David Alexander said, in that it's not just making recommendations, but making recommendations based upon the data, because the city, municipalities obviously won't do anything that's not in their best interest, just like a person. And our city manager is here, and I'm sure that Christian can piggyback that as well. I wanted to underscore those little points because they were so critical. What Ms. Kathy Wells said, what Commissioner Monique Hudson Wright said in the city's accountability, and then what Reverend David said in attaching your potential policies to data so that it's implemented. Thank you so much for the time, and I look forward to what happens with this commission in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. We appreciate your comment. I asked co-chairs to take note of comments on items or matters that need to be taken up within your subcommittee meetings, please take note, co-chairs. Thank you, Mr. Nelson Jones. We appreciate your comments.
I will make the last call for public comment.
Do we have Mr. Talley? Did Mr. Talley come in? Jason Talley? He sent an email earlier this week that he will be making a public comment, so he's not here. All right, anyone on Facebook? Anything on Facebook, Jalissa?
No, there's nothing.
No? Okay, thank you, Jalissa. We appreciate you. At this time, we have no other comments. I will now close the public comment section of our Social Justice, Race and Equity Commission meeting, and I will now pass the torch over to our illustrious Leslie.
Oh, goodness gracious. Thank you very much.
Our leader, our leader.
Chairman Funny. Good evening, everyone. I just want to tell you that you're inspiring. It is just really inspiring to listen to you, to listen to your engagement, to read your comments. You're showing up, as Doug said, and doing the work. And I just appreciate you for that. And people are watching. I really appreciate Doug's comments about this being a journey and just remembering it every time that we are just at a start, and it's going to take a lot. And every bit of learning that we're doing and growing, other folks have to do. Doug spoke to the Brookhaven staff. They have a journey to go through, right? For this to be real, right? And for this to be meaningful and for them to understand it. Our communities do. And so thank you for leading that way. I want you to know that we are working very aggressively on providing tools for community.
It's like, oh, he might as well.
Engagement. You will be hearing very soon, because we know that you can engage and you all have many relationships already, but trying to provide some routes that we know will enable you to get community input and engagement around all of the issues that you're interested in. So expect to hear that very soon. It's been under discussion and we are working on that. I want to remind you that the book club meeting is next Tuesday, the 20th, Tuesday. And we're excited. You know, it's a great book. Even if you can't join the book club meeting, it's really a great book. You know who wrote it. And so I think you'll enjoy it. And I want to give my thanks to the city of Brookhaven for saying, nope, everybody gets a book and they get to enjoy it at their own. So thank you so much, City of Brookhaven, for doing that. And the final thing I'd say is that you've heard some of the co-chairs mention their subcommittee meeting dates, and others are still putting it together. But very soon we're committed to having a full schedule so that you can not only have your meeting scheduled, but be able to pop in and listen to other meetings and how they're progressing. You know, we always just learn by growing and co-creating with one another. So I encourage you, even if you're assigned to one committee, join another. Everybody's going to join policing now because they want to do the simulation. But even beyond that, just join and hang out and see what others are doing and talking about and how they move forward. So that's it. Thank you again for your time. And I'll turn it back to Chairman Funny.
Thank you, Leslie. And let's continuously thank Leslie and her team, Kim, Valerie with the Kettering Foundation, Mindy, Steve. You guys are awesome. Thank you for your leadership and your support of this effort. We could be doing this without you. So thank you, Leslie, for your team. Anything else for this commission before I entertain a motion for the adjournment? You're getting out early tonight. You're getting out 15 minutes early. We're normally right at 9 o'clock. All right, nothing else? I will entertain, I see a hand raised. Yes, I do. Commissioner Hudson.
Hi, I just had a quick question for you, Chairman Funny. Some of the suggestions that Doug made about making sure members of the community are, at the table or engaged, or even the folks who are actually doing the work for the city are engaged, are things that we really talked about in our first meeting. And I think it was maybe my question or other folks' question, like, how are we going to get the buy-in? And whatever answer I was given at the time, I'm pretty sure I was satisfied with it as far as what the plan was going forward. And so I was just wondering, since it does seem like you all have a personal relationship, if you, could just share those specifics with him to see if that is what he was envisioning when he was making those suggestions. And, are we already ahead of the curve on that, like having thought about that? I did hear him mention Oglethorpe, and then we turn around and say, well, we got Dean here. And so that worked out really well. But I was just wondering if we're checking off more boxes and he's aware, not that, that's a big deal, but he had some really great suggestions. And if they went beyond what we're already doing, I would like to know.
I would definitely add that to my little ticker box. And I would tell you, amongst the many things ARC does, they have a very robust public involvement engagement plan within their organization. And when they hire consultants to come in and do work for them, they have to present to them a robust plan. So I really appreciate that, Commissioner Hudson. I will get with Leslie and we will coordinate and get their nod, because that's what they do as a part of the many great things that they do on a daily basis, is engage in the public. So yes, thank you. Thank you for bringing that up. Wonderful. We appreciate that. Anything else? All right, now I will entertain a motion for the adjournment. So Monica took 4 minutes. No, just saying. No, we're still getting out early. Thank you all for your support and your effort and your hard work. Let's see.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you. Thank you, Rabbi. And I want
Second.
to, and there's a second. We will adjourn, and I want to thank Rabbi and his organization. They officially, the board of his congregation, they officially unanimously endorse the Social Justice and Race and Equity Commission as a supportive organization. And Commissioner Hershen, thank you. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for sharing the vision with your organization and bringing them to the table. We really appreciate that. I'll be back in contact with you to continue to nurture that relationship. Okay, meeting's adjourned, everyone. Have a great evening. Great night.
Bye.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Everyone, have a good night.